Hey everybody, CW here, Card Wolf, because I'm always on the hunt for great cards. And today, it is May the 4th. Happy Star Wars Day to all of you. I thought this would be a great day for me to do something I've wanted to do for you guys on the channel for a while, and that is give you a little bit of an overview and a background on the Star Wars collectible card game. If you watch the channel, you saw me get some returns back from PSA about, I don't know, a month and a half ago, maybe 2 months ago. And I kind of talked about it then, and I know a lot of you had questions, and I tried to answer them, and several of you asked me if I would kind of do a video where I kind of give you more information about the game, talk about what cards are what and what's valuable and how the cards came to be and things like that. And International Star Wars Day seemed like the perfect time to do that, so here we are. Hope you guys are having a great Thursday and that you are celebrating Star Wars in your own way if you are a fan. I think that you will enjoy hearing about this and seeing these cards. These are some great cards. It's from a game that it was extremely popular. I want to, I don't want to overstate it. It probably was not as popular as the Pokemon card game is right now, but in its day, it was absolutely one of the most popular card games that was out there. CCGs were still relatively new at the time. Magic the Gathering was the main one that people were interested in, but then a company called Decipher bought the license to do some other CCGs, and Star Wars was one of those licenses, and it started coming out with cards in 1995. The game ran until 2001 when Decipher lost the license and could not afford to renew it. And so for about 6 years, they printed a whole lot of Star Wars cards, and they were very, very popular. There were tournaments all over the country, and they were very luxuriously sponsored tournaments. There were prizes and statues and, all of that good stuff. It was tremendously popular. There still is a lot of popularity to this game. There's an online community of people who still play this game, and collectors still are very interested in completing sets or getting the cards of the characters or the ships or what have you that they like the most. And only recently, the unusual thing about this game is it's only been very recently, within the last couple of years, that I have seen people grading cards from the Star Wars CCG. For many, many years, there was a lot of resistance to this in the hobby. Nobody was grading cards. It was just something that, I don't know why, but people just weren't doing, and it didn't seem like they wanted to. But in the last couple of years, all of that has changed, and you saw me. I sent in some cards as well, and they came back with some pretty good grades. I was pretty happy with those. And if you go online and you look at Star Wars CCGs and PSA 9, PSA 10, they're very valuable cards. They are bringing very high prices right now. So one of the reasons I wanted to do this video, now and pretty soon is because I think it's a great time to start getting into these cards before they really take off and everybody starts grading these things and the prices go so far up that they become out of reach. So I'm going to give you an overview today, and you can ask me any questions you want in the comments, or you can email me. I'll be happy to talk to you more about it or answer any questions you have. Start off just telling you, like most collectible card games, it started off with the Premier set, and it started off with limited edition. They came in booster packs. These are some unopened booster packs I have. The Premier set started out with this. It looks, like the same unlimited edition, but the obvious tell on this is the original ones are limited edition and they're a black border, and then the unlimited ones are printed in much higher numbers and they are white border. So if you are looking for a booster box of these or packs of these, the black border limited edition are what you want out of Premier. And of course, they also had starter decks, which looked like this. Get this in focus for you. That is what is an actual starter deck box. And I think this has an instruction booklet in it too, which I will show you. And that is, all of the rules were contained in this very small little booklet that will not go in focus for me. There we are. So, you can flip through here. It's in color and you can read the rules, but I'm not going to talk about how the game was played. That's not really what my interest is, and I don't think it's probably what most of your interest is either. The main cards out of Premier, they had most of the main characters you could get out of there. The biggest card was probably Darth Vader, and this is one of the cards that I sent in that you guys have seen on the channel before when it came back. It got a PSA 9, And you can look this up yourself to see what it is selling for. I don't really want to get into sale prices or anything like that, but I think when you look it up, you'll see why I think this is something to really to be looking at now and be thinking pretty seriously about as far as an investment or something that maybe you should be collecting, especially if you're a Star Wars fan. Now in Premiere, they had a lot of the main characters. We saw Darth Vader. They also had a very sort of simplified version of Luke. Players used to call that card Farm Boy Luke, and it was not a very powerful version of Luke. But they did have a lot of other big cards like Han Solo and the Millennium Falcon were in there. There were characters and ships. These are two of the biggest vehicles from the Premiere set. Darth Vader's custom TIE fighter, and of course the Millennium Falcon. That remained probably one of the best light side ships in the game for pretty much the whole length of the game. Everybody always used the Millennium Falcon. The cards for the Rebels are white backed, and the cards for the Imperials are dark backed. So you had the light side of the Force and the dark side of the Force represented in these cards, and the backs of these cards remain static throughout the entire duration of the CCG, just as Pokemon cards will always have the same back, so that when you're shuffling cards, if you're playing, you can't tell which cards are which. It was the same for the Star Wars CCG. So even though they released a lot of different sets and expansions for this, the backs always stayed the same, and you would know immediately looking at a back what kind of a card you were going to get. Is this going to be a dark side or a light side card? So you've got a light side ship, a dark side ship. Again, I'm not going to get into the rules of that, but those were also some big cards from that Premiere set. The Premiere set didn't have all of the main characters, though. They waited until the next set, which was called New Hope, and that set had Chewbacca and R2-D2, which I've got here. And those, of course, were pretty sought-after cards back then, and people were pretty excited about that. And then it wasn't until the Hoth set that we got a second version of Luke, a more powerful version of Luke, and you can see that here. You can see he's in his Hoth gear, he's on the ice planet, and he's got a little more power than Farm Boy Luke had for sure. And reissuing characters in different guises and kind of showing on the card how that character developed in the movies as reflected on the card was something that Decipher did throughout the entire duration of the game. And so Luke, for example, slowly got better and better. The initial card wasn't that powerful. Then there was, after Hoth, you had the Dagobah set, so you had Luke as son of Skywalker, and he's training with Yoda, and now he is Power 5, Ability 5, whereas before on the Hoth card he was only Power 4, Ability 4, and this continued on until a later set where, and this is another card I sent in for grading and got a very nice PSA 9 on this, and you can see this is really the ultimate Luke card in the game. This is Jedi Luke, and he is 6 and 6, and he's classified here as a Jedi Knight. So as the game went on, characters like Luke got better, and some of the characters just sort of changed in different ways and had different abilities that would be added. You can see in the game text, this is Han Solo from Cloud City. You can see this is Captain Han Solo, so that kind of gives him a rank, sort of. And then you can see he's not like Luke. His power and ability are lower, but he has the ability to do different things based upon this game text down here. That is, he can pilot really well. He gets bonuses to shooting. Some cards let you draw other cards that will help you as you play the game. And those pretty much continued to evolve as the game went on. It was really interesting to see how the game developed in that way, and I think it made players continue to remain engaged with it. So if you're looking at buying singles, your best bets are, of course, the main characters, and you should look at characters that you like the most. Character cards are usually the ones that are most interesting to collectors and therefore bring the higher prices. A strategy that you could have is you could buy unopened packs and hope that you pull some good characters, and you can do that. And the packs, I want to tell you, if you're thinking about doing that, the packs and the boxes changed a lot, not just in terms of the design. That's a Premiere pack, and this is a pack from Dagobah, a set I just mentioned. You can see this has a much different color of, obviously. It also has different characters. Yoda's there because it was the first time you got a Yoda card. And then here's a Death Star 2 pack, and you can see the Emperor is on there. That was the first time you got a Palpatine card. And so, the pack designs changed and all of that, but also the contents changed a great deal too. You can see there are 15 cards in the Premier pack, and then as the game evolved, they changed that up. In Dagobah, there are only 9. And in Death Star 2, they went back to 11. So what was going on with that? I'm not sure why they did that or what made them decide to alter it that way, but in doing so, they also altered the box size. So if you got 15 cards in, for instance, a Hoth pack, your box of Hoth would be pretty big. There are 36 packs in here with 15 cards per pack. That's a pretty hefty box. Whereas as the game changed and went along, they changed the box size. This is from a set called Special Edition, which was in honor of the special editions of the movies that were released in theaters. And they changed the size here. These are also 9-card packs, and so the box size is much smaller, and there are only 30 packs in here. So you're getting far fewer cards out of here, but the thing to keep in mind is that no matter the pack size, no matter the box size, each pack will have a rare in it. You get one rare, and depending upon the amount of cards in there, you're going to get a certain number of uncommons and a certain number of commons. In general, the commons and uncommons do not have a ton of value. Of course, I think if you got one in a PSA 10, it certainly would have value then, but overall, they're not highly sought after. The rares are the most sought after cards. And then in Death Star 2 and in some of the Reflections cards, which I'll show you in a minute, they introduced ultra rares, which were much rarer than regular rare cards and became very highly sought after. The Jedi Luke I showed you earlier was an ultra rare, and that became a really sought after card. It's still a very high value card and very in demand because it's so hard to pull out of packs. So I mentioned the Reflections cards, and I want to show you those and give you an idea what that looked like. I showed you the Darth Vader before, and I'm going to get that back out one more time. So the regular Darth Vader from Premiere looks like this, and then I've got the Reflections version over here, and that looks like that. And I'm not sure you can kind of see how that one catches the light, and you can see the foil in there. The Reflections cards are really very, very pretty cards. Some of them show up a lot better than others, and they are, for the most part, exact duplicates of their regular cards. And when the first Reflection set came out, that was the first time we saw ultra rares, and this Darth Vader was one of those. It's still, again, a sought-after card now. Some of the other foils I can show you, Chewbacca, I showed you the plain one before. Here's the foil one. Again, you can see how it sort of catches the light. And, that's not a really exciting, dazzling foil card, but some of these really are, and I'll show you some examples of that. I mean, here's a later iteration of R2-D2 that was in the Jabba's Palace set, and you can really see, that the droid there really catches the foil pretty well. This is a card that is a location, and it's the rendezvous point on the outer rim, and you can see that really catches the light quite nicely as well. So some of these foils are pretty neat. This is an effect card. There were events and effects and interrupts and all kinds of other utility type cards like that. This is showing you Celebration with fireworks on Coruscant, so that's also, really pretty cards. Many of these foil cards are really quite nice. And so there were 3 different Reflection sets that came out. Each one of them had 100 different foil cards in them. And like I said, they were all sort of copies of regular cards that had already been issued prior to that point. And each of the Reflection sets do have ultra rares. There's an ultra rare foil version of this Luke, for example, in Reflections 2, and then in Reflections 3 they have some cards from some of the later sets. Now, eventually, the prequel movies started to be released, and Decipher still had the license for the first one of that, and so we got cards from the prequels as well, and you see characters, for example, like Amidala, and you see Mace Windu, and you see characters like that. And one of the things that Decipher did to really spice up the collectible aspect of the game even more was to do what are called alternate image versions of the cards. So, for example, in the Coruscant set, which was one of the last sets to be produced, here is the regular Mace Windu card. This was a rare, of course. And then here is the alternate image version of Mace Windu. Now, I'm not sure which of these has a nicer image of the character. There was some debate about that, but I do know that this alternate image one is much rarer and worth a good deal more than the regular one. They are both classified as rares. So that's something that you can kind of look up on your own and see which image you like better for some of the later sets where you have the new prequel characters in there, if you're into those characters. Another thing that Decipher did, but only for the first 3 sets, they did Japanese versions of the cards. They released Premier, Hoth, and New Hope in Japan, and those cards, again, are pretty much the same image, the same game text, everything else as the American version of the cards. Here's a Reflections version of that Han Solo from Premier. But, of course, everything's in Japanese, and the Japanese cards are really, really high-demand cards. They're quite hard to get. The Japanese cards were printed in much, much lower numbers than the U.S. versions of those cards, and they're pretty hard to get then, and they're even harder to get now. It's kind of difficult to find them, but again, this could be a niche sort of thing that you go for, knowing that most of these cards are going to be pretty high value. The thing to remember, though, if you're getting these cards graded, is that they are very condition sensitive. As you can see, all of these have black borders, and I've talked before when we were talking about sports cards, I've mentioned before how difficult certain sports cards are to get graded because they also have black borders. A set that's notorious for this is the 1971 Topps baseball set, and here's an example of one of those cards. It has the black border, and you can see on this Don Sutton there's very obvious edge wear there. When there's a corner issue, you can't miss it. It's really obvious. And the same is true for these Star Wars cards because of the black border. So that's something to keep in mind when you're looking at singles online. Really pay attention and study those photos that sellers will put up and really try to find cards that do not show obvious blemishes if you're planning on getting the card graded. Some of these sets were printed in much higher numbers than other sets. The Jabba's Palace set and the Cloud City set. Cloud City was the first set to introduce Boba Fett, and you would think that this would be a very valuable card, but because they printed so many Cloud City cards, they really overprinted that set in Jabba's Palace. Most of the cards from those sets, even the rare cards that you would think would be pretty high demand, are really not. A raw Boba Fett card you can probably get for under $10 pretty easily, and even graded, these do not go for anywhere near as much as a card from, say, Premier, for example. Another neat thing that Decipher did when they started making all of these characters and all of these cards and really delving into the Star Wars universe is they got the rights to do expanded universe characters. These were Star Wars characters and ships and whatnot from the Star Wars novels and Star Wars comic books. And they printed some characters that people were super excited about back in the day. One of the most popular cards from the expanded universe was Mara Jade, who was a dark Jedi, and she kind of was a secret weapon for Emperor Palpatine in some of the novels. She showed up in the comic books as well. She even got her own lightsaber. I just have both cards in this sleeve, and you could, outfit her with that lightsaber, and she could really wreak havoc on other Jedi. And so this was a really neat thing that they did. It was the first time, really, that you saw a lot of attention paid to the expanded universe, and it brought in a lot of new collectors when those cards started to come out. A lot of people really were excited about that and wanted to get those. Another really popular character from the expanded universe was Grand Admiral Thrawn. He was another dark side character and a leader in the Empire. And one of the reasons I'm showing this, it's a really cool card, and he was a really popular character then and still is. I don't usually give a lot of investment advice or anything like that on this channel. I try to shy away from that. If you watch the channel, you know that. But I'm going to tell you, I think this card it's got a lot of potential. This is a character who we're going to see for the very first time in the upcoming Ahsoka Tano TV series on Disney+. That's going to come out this summer, and he is going to feature in that series. And so I think that this card, it is, as far as I know, it's his first actual trading card. And so I think that card is going to start to see some real interest once that series comes out and people get familiar with that character, or people who used to read the novels are reminded of that character and really decide that they want to go back and get that card again. So that's the one investment sort of tip that I'll give you. That's a card that I think it's worth keeping an eye out for. Once again, there were a lot of different sets that came out. They came out for about 6 years, as I said. And one of the neat things that Decipher, the company who made them, did is they put tiny little symbols on the cards to tell you what set they were from. So for Premier, there is no symbol. The symbols are up here in this corner, and for Premier, there isn't one. This is blank here. But then for all the sets after that, there is one. So here for Hoth, you have this kind of, I don't know, it looks like a storm. If you look at it very closely, it looks like a snowstorm. And then here's a Han Solo from Endor, and you can see this kind of as a leafy thing there. From Cloud City, you can see there's a cloud car in that little circle. And with Special Edition, one of the boxes I showed you before, they just kind of made it gold to sort of signify the Special Edition aspect of it. On the Thrawn card, it has kind of its own kind of weird symbol that's just sort of like this purple sort of design there that they put on there. And all of the cards have that, so that as a collector and as a player, you can know immediately when you pick it up. If you sort of memorize those symbols, or you keep a little chart in front of you, it's very easy to know what those cards are from, what set they go to. The thing that Decipher did, however, that makes it really hard to collect these cards, especially when you open them from packs and boxes, is there's nothing on the cards to signify what is a rare card and what isn't. And I'm not really sure why they did that. There's, on Pokemon, you have stars and things that tell you which cards are rare and which are not. On Star Wars, you don't have that. So you kind of have to consult checklists, and you kind of have to, in some cases just think, oh, well, it's a Han Solo, it must be a rare. And 9 times out of 10, that's right. There are some promo Han Solos that aren't technically rares and are maybe worth a little bit less, but still in some cases very sought after. So, consult the checklist and make sure you know what you're buying if you're looking to buy some of these, or you can just ask me and I will be happy to tell you. Most of the rares, this will sound crazy, but most of the rares I've memorized. I collected these very, very heavily in the 90s and early 2000s and became very well versed. I really never played the game that thoroughly, but I collected them quite heavily. And some of this, is stuff that I've had since, they came out. This is something that I was very strongly into and still like quite a bit. The game, as far as why I didn't play it, I know that's a question some of you may ask. The game started out with the rule book that I showed you, which is, very small and relatively easy to understand. It was actually a pretty elegant game back then. But then as it progressed, by the time Special Edition came out, you got this in the starter packs. So the starter deck packs were about twice as big as one of those. And the glossary alone was like a dictionary. I mean, this is just terms that are used in the game. So when you're reading the rule book, you come across an unfamiliar term, you can look it up. Like, that's how complicated the game got, and it happened somewhat quickly. And so I kind of lost any interest I may have had in playing. I just didn't want to do that anymore. So again, that's a very basic overview of the Star Wars CCG, and I hope it has helped you kind of feel more interested in this, or feel like you know enough about it that you maybe want to start getting into these cards. Once again, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to ask me in the comments or send me an email, cwcardwolf@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to talk to you more about this game, answer any questions you have, and if you want any guidance on stuff that you're thinking, oh, maybe I'll buy this or maybe this, what do you think? I'll be happy to kind of give you the pros and cons of anything you're looking at as well. I just find these fascinating cards. They're so interesting. There's a lot of text on these as well that gives you background and interesting details about the characters that you may not even know. So let me know what you think of this video. It's one I've been wanting to do for a while, one that some of you have asked for, and I thought it was very appropriate for today, May the 4th. I hope that you are having a great Star Wars day. I'll be back tomorrow with Dorking with Dice, and it's going to be a good one as always. I look forward to seeing you then, and as always, happy collecting.